Well, the vast majority of the protests going on in Washington, D.C. today during Donald Trump's inauguration were peaceful. There were isolated instances of violence. We don't yet know if they were actually progressives or liberals or if they were just provocateurs sent there by the right wing. But we're going to show you, if we could just bring up the B-roll pictures here, you're going to see shots, some of what looks like it might be violence. Oh, this is good too. You're seeing there various things being thrown by police and things like that to try to clear out the group. You're seeing a huge amount of police in riot gear there.
Yeah.
This is just one spot, but there were instances like this in other parts of D.C.
Look, I can't stand this stuff. So
Don't throw the con.
Whatever, the whole thing, yeah. So, look, they could accuse me of being comfortable and saying, well, you're not out there protesting and stuff like that. And no. Protests I'm in favor of. Okay, in fact, I got arrested doing a protest where we did civil disobedience, right? But I want America on our side. You know, you start doing all this mass stuff and you're causing violence, you're only feeding into Trump's hand. I mean, I don't generally believe in, of course there is a thing called a false flag operation. I don't think that it's necessarily going on here. But if you wanted to plan a false flag operation, this is how you would do it, right? I mean, if Donald Trump thought, okay, how can I get people on my side? No, by the way, all this is wonderful. The pictures you're seeing now are peaceful protests, kindergartners, families, etc. That's the kind of protests I want to see.
That last group there, by the way, we had an interview with one of the organizers for it. It's on TOT Interviews right now.
So if you start doing violence and breaking windows and stuff like that, Trump thinks, yes, under the guise of law and order, I get to both crack your skull and pass laws and et cetera to make sure that there are no further protests when I actually do hideous things. Terrible idea. You couldn't help him more.
Now, 2 officers have been injured related to vandalism and destruction of property, and 95 arrests have been made at this point. This is earlier in the day. The numbers could be different now. We don't know what the final arrest count will be, although I think it's noteworthy that on the inauguration, when Trump is being brought in, it's much lower than at other protests that we've seen. We've got some quotes from Secret Service agents. One says, "It's a bunch of anarchists, fun times. It's what we expected." And there are protests like this at every inauguration, of course. There was one funny little interaction where a protester yells out, "They can't arrest us all," and his colleague starts laughing and says, "Of course they can." Yeah, they're set up. There was thousands and thousands and thousands of National Guard and D.C. police and Secret Service and all that. They can arrest a whole bunch of people across D.C.
It's not like there was like 1 million of them. There was like 50 of them. It's like a fairly easy protest.
Of the protesters, yeah.
Yeah, easily arrestable.
Yeah, and the cops were freed up by the fact that there was barely any actual crowd watching Donald Trump, so they can go deal with the protests instead.
Yeah. Look, we know that there were right-wing groups like, was it Project Veritas? Is that what he's called? Keith, what's his name? James O'Keefe and whatever, trying to pay people to cause trouble during the inauguration. This is something that right-wingers do. So I would not be shocked if there were provocateurs out there. We don't know who these individuals are, but we do know one thing, and that is that the mission of true progressives, true liberals, is a peaceful one. Now, I will not make an excuse for anyone who uses violence during any of these protests, but I will say this. I find it interesting what the media's response is to people breaking windows and how quickly they denounce that kind of violence when simultaneously we will be bombarded with police shooting videos where we will see someone like Walter Scott running away from a police officer as he gets shot several times in the back. And that type of violence doesn't get denounced as quickly. Oh, we don't know all the evidence yet. We don't know all the evidence yet.
Walter Scott once smoked marijuana.
Right. So look, violence in any circumstance is unacceptable. But think about the violence that we are now desensitized to versus the type of, vandalism we're very, very sensitive to.
Unlike all the partisans, et cetera, and I include the establishment as partisans. And look, the mainstream media, their number one problem is they claim they don't have a perspective or an opinion. That's preposterous. Their perspective is that of an establishment, okay? Protect the status quo. And so that's their enormous bias, right? So if anything upsets the status quo, they're outraged by, oh my God, you broke a Starbucks window, I go to that Starbucks. Now, I hate that they broke the Starbucks window. I'm going to get back to that in a second, right? But if you shot Walter Scott in the back, well, I'm not Walter Scott. I wasn't going to run from a cop. I don't have outstanding traffic tickets or anything like that.
Yeah,
I'm not a poor guy living in South Carolina.
I'm not a 12-year-old named Tamir Rice who's playing with a toy gun at a park. That's not me. So who gives a fuck?
So and the cops protect me.
Yeah.
The cops protect me. So that's law and order. That's status quo. I kind of like status quo. Yeah. So I'm going to come at it with a certain lens. Now, and to the people who are doing the violence, look, if you're a progressive, the whole point of being progressive is nonviolence. So if you see anybody around you doing violence, do a circle, get around them, and point them out to the authorities because they're not with you. And that way you can root out the provocateurs, okay? And now let me go piss off a whole bunch of people, but that's okay because they're all trolls, right? Both on the whatever, if they think that they're on the left or on extreme left or certainly plenty of the right? Which is like they're the anarchists, like the original trolls. They're like, who cares about order? Let's mess up the order, right? And I'm just gonna mess with people, but I'm not gonna solve anything. What do I care about solving anything? I don't want to be productive. In fact, let's be counterproductive. And the alt-right.
That's a direct quote.
Yeah. And alt-right.
Let's be counterproductive.
Alt-right's the same thing. Let's just mess things up. Let's just break things. Break them. Who cares? We don't have to be productive. The alt-right and the anarchists, they must love each other. I'm surprised they haven't gotten together and done orgies yet.
Yeah.
Right? So, because they're so stupidly unproductive. You know what we want in order to get real change? You want moms, you want small business owners, you want real Americans, and by real Americans, I mean everybody. I don't mean what Republicans think, like, a white farmer from Iowa is a real American, but a gay person from San Francisco is an alien, right? No, I mean all walks of life at those protests so you can win and get real change instead of getting your rocks off pretending to be, alt-left or alt-right or whatever the hell you think you are.
Yeah, and look, I would say we're trying to be fair by covering this. I mean, we're sort of going out of our way to find instances that look a little bit bad, and they broke a window. That's bad, and I'm against it. I share the same philosophy of protest being founded in nonviolence as Cenk does. But this is, considering the perhaps unique threat that Donald Trump poses, I think he got off pretty easy with the protests here. I mean, with his view on the fact that we're far too restrictive in our use of nuclear weapons, and maybe we should just renege on all of our foreign debts, and maybe I'll change the tax code in a way that'll cripple generations of Americans, and we'll get rid of public education, and I'm going to fill the White House with white supremacists. That's going to be fun. Considering the unique threats that he poses almost every level and area of American society, and group in American society, by the way, he's lucky that he didn't have millions marching on the White House today. It's unfortunate that he didn't. Thankfully, tomorrow is going to be a massive day of protests and marches. Of course, the most high profile is the Women's March will be happening in D.C. and in cities in the U.S. and around the world. But if a Starbucks window got broken, that is the least that they should have expected.
Okay, one last thing. Another shot at the corporate media because what gets covered and what doesn't get covered. Democracy Spring actually had more people arrested than there's been arrested today.
Yeah.
So we had 143 people.
That's what I was alluding to earlier.
Yeah, 143 people arrested in one day at the Capitol. It's a record, okay? Over the course of the week, we had, I think, close, I forget if it was 500 or 1,000. I'd have to look it up. Sorry about that. But an enormous, hundreds of people were arrested at the Capitol protesting getting money out of politics. But we didn't break any windows. We were good Americans. We did protest exactly the right way. And so the mainstream media was like, I can't smear you, so it's not fun.
That's right.
So like if you did anything slightly wrong, if you did jaywalking, then I can come out and make fun of you. And I can criticize you, and I can say, look at these dirty people trying to change the system, right? If they could do that, then they'll cover. Look at what they did today. There's 2 broken windows, 95 people arrested, maybe, right? So they're like, oh my God, look at that. Don't change anything. Don't change anything. And by the way, when you break the windows, you help them with that smear campaign, okay? So, and I asked somebody in the establishment media, I said, by the way, okay, so you didn't cover it. If we were violent, would you have covered it? Absolutely. Absolutely. You know it, right? And if we were the Tea Party and 143 people in the Tea Party had gotten arrested in one day and broke the record for civil disobedience in American history at the Capitol, would you have covered it? He's like, we definitely would have covered it, right? But so if you're the right wing and you want to protect the establishment, you're going to get covered. if you're left wing and are counterproductive to change, oh, we're going to cover it, right?
Yeah.
But if you actually want change, I don't see you. What do you do? Oh, you're doing things the right way. Oh, not interesting. Help us with Operation Watchdog. Help us hire 4 new reporting teams. We could be the watchers on the wall. Make sure we keep Trump and the establishment in check. TYTnetwork.com/go.